So, good morning, you guys. I want to say that, I went to AEW Grandslam last night, and there was a bunch of ups and downs. And then also, I do want to mention as I do this review that, there were a couple of issues with the show and the production, and then there's also some matches that I didn't check out really. So, I'm going to go all through the Grand Slam matches. There are some collision matches that I want to talk about as well. And I also want to mention that they did give out full gear tickets. So what that means is that if you are in the New York area and you go to Grand Slam, they'll automatically tell you during the show that actually they'll give you a QR code and you can scan it and you can get full gear tickets. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the full gear tickets. A lot of people were mad because they show the QR code. When you scan it, it didn't show you the page or whatever. So somebody yelled out, okay, the password's full gear, and I got tickets. I got the ringside section for like $500, but definitely got to kind of work on those things with QR codes. You have to make sure that, if people are having issues with it, they have to make sure that, that all the fans are able to get the QR codes because it's a bonus for showing up, really. The next thing that I would say about that is that they should give out the QR code during Collision just to make people wait because they're definitely trying to make sure that the audience stays for Collision. But overall, it was a really great night, like a lot of great matches and really good attendance. I think they drew over 8,000 people to Arthur Ashe. Obviously, it could have been way higher, but I think they drew better than last year. There was a projection a few months ago that they only drew 3,000 people, but if it's over 8,000, that's great. Brian Dane, they started with the Von Erichs versus Von Erichs and Dustin Rhodes versus the Premier Athletes in a dark match, but it's a typical thing where people are cheering for Dustin, people want to see Dustin perform. The Premier Athletes, they need to do something new, but they're at the point where honestly, if they're just doing that same gimmick of Premier Athletes suck and all that stuff, they need to go packing because I don't see a future in them. But I also feel with Dustin Rhodes and the Von Erichs, I really would like to see them, go after the trios title. That they really need to they need to defend their six-man titles, or they need to kind of do the trios titles, or even like during dark match, they should just do trios titles, or go after other like trios teams. Like I think just kind of stir the pot with some people, or people have to stir the pot with them, really. Be like, okay, you guys are privileged. You're only here because your last name is Rhodes and Von Erich. Like, there has to be something. Even if it's a dark match, there has to be some kind of conflict. The first match was Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness. Like when Bryan Danielson came, that place became unglued. Like that, to quote Jay Williams, that bitch went off the chain, really, and it was like transcendent to see how much people love Bryan Danielson, and it was crazy because I think that a lot of people care and love him, and we don't know when his last match is gonna be, because they can easily do something with the Moxley storyline, like see, that's his retirement match, or they can do something where Moxley wins or loses, and then kind of continue a storyline where Bryan Danielson's like, no, that's how I lost my title, but that's not how I want to go out, really. I want to go out with somebody who I feel is a worthy, person to retire me, and I think that they're going to do that, really. But it was a really great match. There was a lot of submissions and exchanges. Nigel McGuinness did a really great job in this match. I think one of the unfortunate things was this whole feud, because obviously Nigel McGuinness was like talking to the ring was talking to the camera a lot. He felt like Michael Cole trying to pick a fight with Jerry the King Lawler. Like, I really wish he had matches or squash matches just so he kind of knew what he could do, really. But it was definitely very athletic. There were a lot of reversals and submissions, and it really kind of showed that the story was like they're trying to one up each other because they have similar styles and all that, really. And as I said, I think my concern is, where do you go with Nigel McGuinness? If this is just a one-off match and Nigel McGuinness doesn't wrestle again, no problem. But if you want him to wrestle and you want him to be a bigger deal, you have to kind of like have him go after something. What about the TNT title or an open challenge type of title? What about Okada or something like that? Because Okada has a more athletic type of style, really. So you have to kind of make sure that if you want to do something with him, you got to just, live up to that. The next match was FTR. Oh, no, the next match was Hook versus Roderick Strong for the FTW title. Unfortunately, I was hungry. I went to go get a soda and a hot dog. Didn't watch this match. It went by very quickly. And what I would say with this match is that they retired the FTW title. And what I would say is that I'm very happy that they did that, because there's way too many titles in AEW. The other problem is that Hook cannot be the FTW champion, because it always seems like he goes back to that title, and that's actually really bad for him because first of all, it's like it's not really a professional wrestling title in the sense that it's not like part of the company. It's almost like the $1 million championship. It's nice to have it, and it's nice that a small group of people have it, but it doesn't make those people prestigious because it's not really like part of the AEW company. The other issue is that I think they have like close to 19 belts. So if you have close to 19 belts, you got to just cut some of them out, really. So I'm happy that he's away from that, but also if he wants like to be a real champion, he needs to be having the TNT title. He needs to be fighting the ROH champion. He really needs to go somewhere, and he cannot be circling back. So I give them a lot of points for that tonight. The next match was Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher versus the Young Bucks. Very great match. A lot of flips, a lot of reversals, a lot of them countering each other's finishes, and the floor, and it definitely became unglued. And I believe, and I'm correct, I think Kyle Fletcher lost. Yeah, and he lost because of a couple of things. That he got pinned, but also Don Callis wanted to use the screwdriver. And Kyle Fletcher was going to do it, but he actually was stopped by Will Ospreay. Like, Will Ospreay's like, you're going to do it with honor. You're not going to embrace that. And then the next thing that happened was Will Ospreay was going to do the Tiger Driver. So it's a little repetitive, like the whole screwdriver thing, the whole Tiger Driver thing. And my hope for next week is that if you're going to do Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, you don't have that match. You have Will Ospreay be attacked by the Don Callis family behind closed doors. You may have Ospreay come out and face Ricochet. Then you have Don Callis family and Ricochet all beat down Ospreay, and Ricochet becomes, a member of the Don Callis family. And then you kind of do that storyline. And then you almost have Will Ospreay go through the Don Callis family. And then you have Ricochet take his title eventually. And no, you have maybe Will Ospreay get beaten down, and then what happens is that he's stripped of the title, and then he shows up in an open challenge match against somebody at Wrestle Dream, and then he kind of talks about he wants to go through the Don Callis family one by one, really, type of thing, really. That'd be the way to do it. That's what I would hope for. And then you have Ospreay versus Ricochet at Wrestle Dream, and I think that'd be the way to do that. Or Ricochet's momentum, you can even have them over the AEW Championship or the Continental Championship, type of thing, really. So I think that would be good. But overall, it was like the match of the night, really. It was really, really awesome. The next match was Mariah May versus Mina Shirakawa. Once again, I had to take a piss break, so I didn't watch this match. I didn't know. I noticed that at the end of the match, Will Nightingale came out, so I'm very happy because Mariah May is the ultimate is the heel right now, and you need to put her up against baby faces. But you also have to put her up against a baby face that people know about. Not just some random Japanese wrestler that most people just are like, who's she? This person can't speak on the mic. This person has no charisma. You have to kind of make sure that this person's actually, somebody who people know about, and who can kind of, preach to American audience. You have to make somebody. You have to make sure you have somebody who can get over really, and it has to be Will Nightingale. I know it's a little counterproductive, because you just had her lose to Chris Statlander, but it should be Will Nightingale versus Mariah May at Wrestle Dream, and then what I want to see is Athena versus Chris Statlander, and Chris Statlander's thing is like, I want to defeat the undefeatable champion, I want to defeat the forever champion. It's actually it's going to stand out a lot more, and it's good if all three women's titles are held by three bad bitches or whatever, like Mercedes Moné, herself, Chris Statlander, and then Mariah May, something like that. Really, like that'd be a really good that would be a really good thing, because then you have heel versus babyface type of dynamic. The last match of the night, and then also what happened was Prince Nana was interviewed about the status of Swerve Strickland. And it was actually funny what happened. That I think it was Sammy Guevara who was doing the VIP. Like, people were talking to Sammy Guevara. And then also, when people were trying to get into the arena, Swerve was there. And Swerve was like, he was all like, dressed up like a security guard. So, he was incognito. So, like, when the gate was about to open, everyone was like, whose house? Swerve's house. Whose house? Swerve's house. It was really, really funny. And it was kind of like, a little cute too and stuff like that. Then everybody came in really, but Swerve was there. And then actually what happened was that when I was talking about when Nana was talking about Swerve, MVP came out, and it's kind of really hinted that the Hurt Business is coming. So Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley. So I think that that'll be really interesting. But I think what should happen is Nana should talk to MVP, and I think what happens is that you do Adam Page versus Bobby Lashley, or Adam Page versus Shelton Benjamin, and you kind of see where that goes. Really, I do think that would be good to kind of go to do those options. Really, it's gonna be a little hard because it's almost like, what do you do with Adam Page? And if you want to make Swerve part of the Hurt Business, or you want to make the Hurt Business a faction that's dominant, how do they take wins and losses? So that's going to be, an interesting dynamic. The next thing that I'll tell you is that there was Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. Really great match, very violent match, a bunch of dives, a bunch of spots on the table, on the stairs, and I was happy there was no interference, because obviously if you have too much interference, it makes it feel like a TNA wrestling match or a WCW match, and I'm happy that they just understood they could have interference, but it makes Jon Moxley a stronger villain if he actually wins matches and he doesn't have interference. Again, you don't do the Bobby Roode thing in TNA wrestling where every match the heel cheats. And then the other thing is, you don't do the TNA wrestling thing where you have a Vince Russo ending where it's like a beatdown by everybody. The next thing that I will say is that, there was some blood in the match. Darby Allin just got hit hard, but there was no super bloody stuff, because they should have a rematch in a more hardcore stipulation type of thing. And I'm happy that, as I said, once again, they had self-control in this match, because they understand that, if you want to have a bloody Jon Moxley or Daredevil bloody Jon Moxley and Darby Allin type of match, you don't put that on television. You make your marks pay for that type of match. And overall, it was really good. It was actually really awesome because, Jon Moxley, because Bryan Danielson came out, he choked Jon Moxley, and, people were cheering for Wheeler Yuta. He didn't come out, and then, he's like, I'm going to kick your fucking head in, and it set up, everybody was so unglued. And then Jon Moxley was in the crowd. I wanted to give him the bunny ears, but I knew that he would probably whip my ass, or Cesaro would slap my hand and give me the Rick James bitch slap if I did that. But it was so cool. I was behind him, and and Jon Moxley was smiling because I kept calling him Romper Stomper. I was like, Romper Stomper, Romper Stomper, and he heard me. He was chuckling because he kind of knew that. We all know that he ripped off Russell Crowe, Mr. Fighting Around the World. And overall, that was really it. It was actually my favorite time going. It was actually my favorite time going to Grand Slam. I think the emotion through the show was great. The first Grand Slam was also my second favorite when the Acclaim won the titles, but this one was excellent. Now I want to talk a little bit about Collision. So the first thing that happened was during the 7:30 to 8 p.m. They usually have dark matches, and one of the dark matches was also. There was 3 dark matches. I don't remember one of them, but one of them was actually Jack Perry versus Minoru Suzuki. Really great match. Minoru Suzuki, he looks like a crazy bastard. He has the world's greatest haircut. He reminds me of a shark, really, just with his scary eyes and his scary smile. He honestly looks like he looks like a man shark almost, really. But they had a great match, a bunch of counters, reversals. Minoru Suzuki was dominating most of the match. I felt that he was dominating a little too much, so it did hurt and bury Jack Perry, so that's just how I felt about that. I think that they should have done something where Jack Perry should have just, really survived a little bit more. So I do feel that it did hurt Jack Perry a bit, this match. The next thing that I want to tell you guys is that they had another match where, and I think I'm trying to remember the matches. They had Hologram, the Beast Mortos, and I think there were some Dragon Luchador, Dragolisto, if I'm saying his name correctly. So when they had that match, they actually, when they had that match, it was a good match, but I did feel they kind of are setting up Mortos as kind of almost like Luchasaurus. Sometimes, he has it, sometimes he doesn't have it, sometimes he responds to comedy, and we can't really do that. I really want Mortos to be just like Kane and Mick Foley. I know you're doing that with Luchasaurus, but you should kind of put that over into Mortos, because I think that they're trying to make him a little too silly. So they have to be careful of that. But definitely, Hologram won the match. And as I said, I really, really just want to see Hologram actually, go somewhere. Because, you can't just do something with Hologram where he's just consistently having matches and he has no direction, really. Have him go after a title. Like I said, I would have done Ricochet versus Hologram at Wrestle Dream, because I think that would be a really great match. You just don't have him get lost or be like, okay, well, you're a luchador that can't speak English, so we got nothing for you, because we don't know how to book wrestlers that don't speak English, So I do hope that they actually do something with him. The next match that happened on the card, and I know I'm doing a little bit out of order. I didn't see all the matches. They had a segment between of the Maximum Male Models, and they had like this male model that they had wear their clothing, and they had and they wore like a see-through shorts, so you saw their ass and their thong, really. And that person had a really ugly body. I was like, yeesh, this person looks like, they must be really old, or this person must look like, they've been worn down. And it was revealed that their model was ambushed by Daddy Ass, and the Acclaim came down and they beat the male models. So they're going to set up something, with that. And I also would say that I saw the they did Jericho, and they did know the Jericho Appreciation Society versus the conglomeration. And if I remember correctly, Big Bill actually he did a choke slam spot on somebody. I believe it was Kyle Fletcher, Kyle O'Reilly or Orange Cassidy, but he did a choke slam spot on them, and Chris Jericho actually got the pinfall. So I'm happy they got a pinfall. They need to have one more match at Wrestle Dream, I believe. And definitely Big Bill got a big response, really. I really want to see Big Bill on the microphone, because I really think that could lead to something really great. So, I would say that's all I remember of the show. I didn't stay for Sammy Guevara versus Okada, because I had to catch the train and go back to Connecticut. But I would also say that I think there were some big problems with the show. I think the biggest problem was that some of the audio was a little messed up. I was actually very surprised that they didn't have pyro for the they did not have pyro for the Grand Slam show, and that was really bad, because obviously this is supposed to be pay-per-view caliber. You do that with shows like that. I understand if there were some choices made at the last minute, where they either wanted to save money, or they found out that they had a lot of extra people, really, because I think they went from 3,000 to 8,000 really quick. So they had to accommodate everybody. It wasn't sold out, and I'm not sure how big Arthur Ashe Stadium is, but if they drew 8,000 people, it's very, very clear that they could have drawn a lot more, And I think they had maybe half the arena just blocked off, really, So obviously, they drew big tonight, but they didn't draw, maybe more than 50%, really, So a few thousand people, close to 10,000 is always good for any show, but definitely they need to go bigger and better, really. The next thing was that during the show, I'm not sure what they did backstage, but there was no matches that were hyped for. There was no matches that were hyped for the anniversary show. You have a Title Tuesday show, and then you have Wrestle Dream. So there were no matches hyped for any of those, except for Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson, and that's not good. So you need to cut down on those shows. I need to do a video about that, but AEW really needs to cut down their special shows. For Grand Slam, they need to do something like get rid of your anniversary show, combine Grand Slam and their anniversary show together. That would be the best thing to do, really. Just AEW Grand Slam 5th anniversary. That's what they need to do, not 2 weeks in a row of those shows, because they can't deliver. And if you have Wrestle Dream, that's just too much consolidation, really, So they just have to do it like that, and maybe move Wrestle Dream towards a little bit, maybe a little later in October, really, So maybe towards maybe a week before Halloween, and then you have Full Gear the week before the week before Thanksgiving, the Sunday, the Saturday of the Saturday that goes into like the week before Thanksgiving, really. Like so the 23rd, when Thanksgiving's the last week of November. And then the last thing that I'll tell you guys is that they had Wheeler Yuta and Pac and Cesaro defend the Trios Championship against Private Party. I was very happy with this match because, first of all, I thought that Wheeler Yuta was actually going to win this match. I thought Wheeler Yuta was actually going to screw them over and then they're going to lose the titles. But what happened was that Wheeler Yuta just got into a fit of rage and then he puts Private Party in a bunch of offensive moves and then a submission, really. So it was an interesting thing because he's still sticking with Private Party. He's still sticking with the trio with these guys with Pac and Claudio, and they both kind of accept him because their end game was to keep the title, so they don't care about the bullshit that Wheeler Yuta was doing. Like there's points in the match where Wheeler Yuta was not into it. He kind of looked unfazed. But it's actually funny because he has a lot of hair in his face, so he's trying to be Bryan Danielson. I think you need to set up a tag team match of Bryan Danielson, Wheeler Yuta versus Claudio and Pac. Like that would be a really great match. There's some like definitely in this feud, the outcome of this is Wheeler Yuta could be a megastar, and they need to do that to build new stars. I think they can do something with Wheeler Yuta. Like he can kind of be the young Bryan Danielson, like the underdog, but you really have to have great matches. And I also like this as well because he's angry. He has like a bit of a killer instinct, but he's not pulling a like a John Moxley or Darby Allin, really. He kind of is more of a technical wrestler, so I appreciate him going in that direction, really. He's not going to be like this. He's, as I said, that's appropriate for his character, but it's not appropriate for him to turn into like this, to a Mick Foley or a Cactus Jack, really. And I'm proud of that because the problem is that if you do that with everybody, they become hardcore wrestler when they're angry. That's not realistic. Again, there are, like, again, I know people who do Taekwondo and when somebody's being a jerk to them in a Taekwondo match, what are they going to do? They're going to put that person in submission that hurts. And that's that, really. And until that person screams and begs for their life, really. They're not going to, just beat them with a kendo stick, or they're not going to, just drop them on their head until they bleed or whatever. They're going to, do what's appropriate for them, really. And I like that because, with AEW, they're not good about that. They'll just have them do hardcore bloody bullshit. I'm happy that they didn't do that. The next thing that I will say about the show, really, really quick, is that the last thing that I remember, I'm trying to go through the matches. I'll just give myself 10 seconds. But they did have another match that I do want to talk about, if I remember really quickly. Hold on, guys.